Hello, this is Mr. Zanaletto. I'm going to review area polygons. The main thing first is to go ahead and recognize what the equation that you should be using, a formula that you should be using. Parallelograms, rectangles, and squares all have the same one. Area equals base times height. When you say base and height, the one thing that you need to make sure you realize is that the height must be perpendicular to the base, and vice versa. The base must be perpendicular to the height. If that's not true, you have issues. And when you have extra information, like here in number 1, and for that matter number 2 also has extra information, you got to realize that in that case, what is the extra and what should you use? So what I like to do is look for that right angle. Whatever that right angle is connecting to, that right angle is telling me this is my height and this is my base. And that's the base along the actual parallelogram and the height in the middle of the parallelogram. So now, knowing that those are my base and my height, I use the area base times height formula and say area equals 7 meters times 4 meters. That being substituting in my base and my height. Now, simply multiplying those together, you get your area is 28 meters squared. The next one, we're doing exactly the same thing. It's a parallelogram. Again, I'm looking for that right angle, this being my height, and this is my base. And if that's my base, I don't have a number along it, but this is a parallelogram. Opposite sides are congruent, meaning that they have the same measure. So that's going to be my base, that 1.4 inches that I found over here. I bring it over here, say that's my base and my height. Now, plugging it in back into that formula, area equals base times height. And when I multiply those together, I get 3.22. So area equals 3.22. Now we measure that in inches squared since the units were inches. That's my answer. So those are my first two, using the simple equation area equals base times height since they're both parallelograms. Triangles, a little bit different. We're going to use area equals 1/2 base times height. So I write that out. Area equals 1/2 base times height. I look at this, and again, the base and the height have to be perpendicular. Here's a perpendicular. Here is my height. Here is my base. Now this base was not added together, so I need to do that. That's 16 feet. 16 feet, and the height is 5 feet. Plug that into our equation. Our equation, 1/2 base times height. Area equals 1/2. Again, this is my base. This is my height. So I have 1/2, 16 feet times 5 feet. And when I multiply those together, I get 80. Half of 80 is 40. 40 feet squared. Area equals 40 feet squared. Again, using the same formula and looking for that right angle. Here, it's not drawn in the height. It actually is part of the triangle. This leg and this leg are going to make up my base and my height because they form that right angle. Again, I use my 1/2 base times height. Area equals 1/2, 12 meters times 5 meters. 12 times 5 is 60. Half of that's 30. Area is 30 meters squared. So now I have those four done. Now moving along to rhombus and kite. Now rhombus and kite are right here. 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. So area equals 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Now again, the diagonals need to be perpendicular. And they are. Here, these are perpendicular. They don't show them to be perpendicular, but they are. Since it was a rhombus or kite, you didn't have to know that. I mean, they didn't have to mark that. But in this case, again, pulling off the information, if this is 8 feet, and this is 8 feet, or 8 inches, I'm sorry, 8 inches and 8 inches, that's going to make this whole thing 16 inches. And from here is 14. This is 14. And this is 8. So that whole thing is going to be 22 inches. Those are my two diagonal lengths. So when I plug those in, I get area equals 1/2 diagonal 1, 22 inches. Diagonal 2 is 16 inches. Multiply those together in a calculator, and you get 176 inches squared. Now that was a kite. Rhombus has the same formula, so I'm going to use that same formula. And if this is 3, then this is 3. That makes 6 feet. 6 feet from there to there. And here, if that's 5 feet, that's going to be another 5 feet. That's going to be 10 feet as a diagonal. So the two diagonals measure 10 and 6 feet each. So when I plug those in, I get area equals 1/2 times 10 feet times 6 feet. Multiply that, you get 30 feet squared. So area equals 30 feet squared. And that's how I do those. Like I can say again, find the formula that you want, find your measurements that you're going to use, usually tied to a right angle, and then plug those in. Make sure your height must be perpendicular to base. Thank you, and I will continue the other page on the next video.